मैम अगले क्लास का रिकॉर्डिंग है क्या?
Yes, the previous class recording is there. So I had actually posted it on the on the discussion forum. So if you go to the NPTEL discussion forum, I had added all the links to my tutorial and Jobin's tutorial along with the slides. अब प्लीज़ वो डिस्कशन फोरम पे एक थ्रेड पे है.
मैम अभी चेक करते हो?
हाँ.
हाँ मैम मिला, 3 लिंक्स मिला.
Right, okay. Just click on it and see. It should open to the YouTube channel of and I think there's an Excel sheet पे link
ठीक
होता
है
है. हाँ, Excel sheet पे presentations है और
है मैम.
हाँ. Think I'll wait for another 2-3 minutes before starting. Okay, so today might just be a bit slow because I'm using only one screen. So it keeps on going off when I have to admit more people. Alright, I think we can start now. We have about 30 people. So, yeah, hi to all the people who have joined in a bit later. Good evening. Today, I hope all of you have watched all the lectures from the week 2 lecture series for the NPTEL course on wildlife biology. Hi. Yeah, I am Chiti Arvind for those who don't know and who weren't there for the first tutorial session, and today I'll be conducting your discussion. Even Jobin conducts sessions every Friday evening, and I conduct it on Tuesday evening. Alright, so today is going to be a mix of MCQs and discussions. So let's go on to lecture number 4, which involves levels of organization. So could you tell me what are the examples of hierarchy in nature? Any examples of hierarchy in nature that you have observed? You can give me any examples. It can be animal life, plant life. Okay, what is hierarchy? Let's start with what is hierarchy. This has to be an interactive session. You guys please feel free to use the chat box or unmute yourselves and talk.
Systematic framework.
Okay, yes, systematic framework, but what does the word hierarchy mean? What do you think it means? Yes, it is a systematic framework, and if you have to simplify that, any ideas? So it is a, so I think the title itself gives you a clue, right? It is a level of organization. So you start with like a very, yes, order of increased complexity, yes, sure. So you basically start with a small basic unit, and these basic units come together to form a larger unit which performs a more complex function, right? Like for example, let me start, like a cell is a basic unit, and cells form tissues which come together to form organs, which come together to form organ systems. So all this is basic hierarchy, right? Does anyone have any more examples of what hierarchy is, or any examples of hierarchy in nature?
Species, genus,
Sure.
order.
Sure. Species, genus, order, but okay, that is hierarchy, but these units do not come together to form a larger functional unit. Okay, seed, sapling, plant to tree, that is also ideally the same organism that is growing to form a plant, to form a sapling, or to form a tree. But in case if you take like a leaf, like a bunch of leaves come together to form like a branch, and branches come together to form like a tree, right? So that is like the theory of how hierarchy works, right? So I'm sure you might have covered what is the emergent principle in nature. It is following up on the first question. Could you give me a few examples? Even if it's from the lecture, it's fine. Feel free to use the chat box. Emergent principle. Anybody? Okay, does somebody want to tell me what is the emergent principle? Yeah, the whole is greater than the sum of parts, correct? Yes. Okay. Would you like to explain some more on that? Emergent principle, anyone? So you've gotten that right. The whole is greater than the sum of parts. I think there was like a really cool example of ants that was shared by the course conductor. Anyone wants to talk about that? Oops. Ananya, would you like to maybe talk about any examples? Not putting you on the spot, but since you have replied. Okay, Ryanal says he doesn't know. Alright, so, well, as Ananya has mentioned, the whole is greater than the sum of parts. So there is like a small unit that performs a certain function, but when many of these small units come together, they perform a greater function. So, for example, like I think one of the first examples was a centipede, and a centipede's body has several units, right? And each of these unit has two legs, but this unit on its own does not perform any function. But when it comes together to form a centipede with like I don't know, several pairs of legs, it forms this organism. So that is an example of a whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? And there was this really cool example that Professor Ankur had shared about the ants and fire ants that form rafts with altered hydrophobicity, which is basically like ants individually they might tend to either like sink or drown in water, but when they come together they form they become very hydrophobic in nature, which means that they repel water and then they float on the water to form a raft. And this raft can be carried great distances till they reach some land or some low lying area, and then they move on to the trees or the vegetation or whatever it is. And that paper has several examples of how ant organizations have been used in different ways in terms of like viscosity and other such examples, right? I think I don't know if you've all watched the videos because they've been explained really well. Alright, so this is another simple question. Who is the founder of the hierarchical theory? Right, it is Simon. Correct, correct, sure, correct. Alright, I'm going to switch the slide. Okay, so again pertaining to levels of organization, what is a basic structural and functional unit of life? Right, everyone's getting that right. Cell, sure, sure. Okay, Simon, yeah. Okay, and moving on to the next question. What is a basic functional unit in the field of ecology? Organism, organism, organism. Can someone tell me why organism and why not cell? This is with relation to our previous week's lecture. Could someone tell me why it is organism and not cell?
Organisms join together to form a population.
Sure, yes, but why is it in the field of ecology it is the basic functional unit and why is it not the cell?
Because in ecology, it's the study of the group of organisms present in an
Sure,
ecosystem.
yes, I think Kavya has very nicely put that together. So yes, ecology is the study of organisms. So we need to get already to the organism level. So that is definitely your very first unit in the field of ecology. Okay. Okay, this is another set of like interactive questions. So the stomach consists of several layers of tissues broadly categorized into the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, subseriosa and serosa. This collection of tissues makes the stomach a what? It's an easy one. What is it?
An organ.
Correct, right. That is definitely an organ. Okay, so this next question, a little bit more of reading. What does a level of organization in an ecosystem include? Choose the most appropriate answer. It includes interaction between all the biotic and abiotic components in an area with their adaptations to their environment. It includes all the interactions between biotic components in a particular area. It includes interaction between all the biotic and abiotic components in an area. Or it includes interactions between all the communities in an area.
Maybe interaction between
A, are you sure? A. I'm not sure where these answers are starting from. C, okay. Any other? Well, there are 45 people. I see only 4 people answering. B, okay. Maybe A. Okay. So let's go through the levels of organization. So first you have an organism. Then organism becomes, what's the next level?
Population,
Yeah. Next.
community,
Okay. Next. After community, then okay, ecosystem, then biome, correct,
biome,
right, and biosphere. Okay, so we have got all the levels of organization understood. Now can you tell me what are the answers, and could you justify your answer? A only because environment is getting interacted. Okay. So A has interaction between biotic and abiotic components in an area with their adaptations to their environment. Okay. Anybody who said B and C with any justifications? A, okay. Kavya is also A. Somebody said B and C.
because the level of organized.
Yes, Amol, what is your choice?
B.
B, okay. And B is interactions between only biotic components.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What are the abiotic components? What level does that come at? Interaction between biotic and abiotic components.
Madam, answer is C.
Okay, who is this? Titas Das? Is that you who
Yes,
replied? Yes. Alright. Please tell me why is it C and not A?
Madam, if we take the pond ecosystem as an example,
Right.
so here for zooplankton and phytoplankton, in order to sustain in that particular environment required, madam, oxygen. So through sunlight, by sunlight through photosynthesis, the oxygen dissolve in the water, and then all the zooplanktons and phytoplanktons are able to sustain.
Sure. That is correct, but why not A?
Madam, can you just repeat once again?
So, you have chosen C as your answer, but why not A? Why is option A? Why do you choose C over A? Option A. Okay, alright. So I'm going to tell you. So the ecosystem only includes the association between the biotic and the abiotic components. But when you go to the layer above, biomes, it involves adaptations. right? So you have adaptations that are very important that happen at the biome level. So all the kinds of flora and fauna present in a particular biome type has certain adaptations for it to survive in that kind of biome. Does anyone know different types of biomes? So biomes are like you have broadly your marine, yes, forest, grassland, such kind of things are known as biomes. And all, yes, desert, aquatic, correct. And see all the your organisms that live in a desert, whether they are plants or animals, have certain adaptations that enable them to survive in a particular ecosystem, right? So when adaptations come into play, that level becomes a biome. But when you are talking about ecosystem is just interactions between the biotic and abiotic components, right? That is like a lower unit. So actually option A covers the definition of a biome, right? Is that does that sound reasonable? Did you all understand? Or is that confusing? Somebody has to give me feedback or talk, otherwise I will not know. You're confused? Okay. So what is happening at the ecosystem level? So at an ecosystem level, so what is happening at the community level? At the community level, different populations are considered coming together, right? And then what happens at the ecosystem level? You have interactions between the biotic and abiotic components in your uh, area, right? So it includes at the community level all your different biotic populations, and they interact with the environment, which is your abiotic component, right? So ecosystem includes biotic and abiotic interaction, right? So at this level you note how they depend on like water, air, temperature, the substrate, etc. But in terms of biome, what is biome? In biome, what happens is it is a set of ecosystems that come together that share a similar characteristic, right? So you can have like a forest in like Karnataka bordering, what is it, biotic, abiotic, but biotic is environment. Not really. So when you say environmental factors, you are only talking about abiotic components. That's a good point that you brought up, and in case it was not clear to everybody, when we say interactions with the environment, it means the interactions of living organisms with our abiotic factors, which is like wind, water, all these non-living things. Temperature, precipitation, rainfall. And abiotic plus biotic gives you ecosystem. Ecosystem is the interaction between biotic and abiotic components, like your living world with the non-living world. Right? Does that make sense? And then when you have multiple ecosystems that come together, multiple like forests that come together, like they form like a biome. And in a forest type of biome, you have flora and fauna that have certain adaptations which are different from the flora and fauna in a desert biome, for example. Like deserts, flora and fauna have to survive with very low water content. So they need to make certain adaptations collectively to help them survive with low water conditions, right? But that is not the same for like tropical forests where they receive high levels of rainfall. They have other challenges that they need to counter, right? Does this make it more clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, moving on to the next question. Okay, so this is like a really interesting slide. So, what do you think these images depict? And could you tell me what these are and why they are important? Okay, pug marks, sure, yes. One of the figure is pug mark. That's a good guess. It is definitely a scratch of an animal, but it is not a tiger. But yes, that is a scratch on a tree, it's a marking. Animal stool, yes, sure. That is fecal matter of some animal. Human shoe next to, yeah, it's actually an elephant footprint. So looks like Ryanol has got all the guesses right. So yeah, so could you tell me what are all these signs and why is it important? How are these signs helpful to us? What are these signs telling us?
For monitoring wildlife.
Sorry?
For monitoring of wildlife.
Yes, correct. That's absolutely correct. You can monitor wildlife by looking for signs. Yes, they help us in deciphering the presence of animals in the area. Yes, correct. So, if you are a field biologist, example, somebody studying to study environmental conditions in relation with animal, maybe not directly with such markings, but yes, you can definitely find out like presence. Animal corridors, yes, surely you can find out which are the paths that are used by which organisms. And why is it difficult? Why is it important to learn the signs of these animals? Why is that important? Like, for example, if I am a tiger biologist or I am an elephant biologist, usage of ecosystem by the animal, yes, sure, yeah. And I'm suppose I'm a tiger biologist and I'm going to my field site and I don't see any tigers. So can I say that there are no tigers there because I didn't see them?
Footprints are able to calculate the number of.
Yeah, at an instance, yes, you can probably try and see where they are, how many individuals are there depending on if they overlap or not. But yes, I'm not sure about fossils, but I'm talking about like current field work. Like if I were a tiger biologist and if I go to the field and if I'm looking for tigers and I don't find tigers, I can't really say, right, there are no tigers, because what I am trying to get to is that it is really important to look for field signs, right, because they are important indicators of animal presence. So though you cannot see these animals or you might not see them in a particular area, they use the area and you look for their signs. Either you look for their scat, which is, yes, the fecal matter, it's called scat for larger animals. Then you look for scratch marks on trees, then you look for pug marks, footprints. Also, another really cool way to monitor biodiversity. Do you all know any tools, modern technology tools that we use to monitor biodiversity? Camera traps, yes, excellent. Camera traps are set up in corridors and paths that are frequented. So, would you like to explain what are camera traps?
Uh, Ma'am, camera traps are, for example, they have some motion sensors and they are placed in a region or attached to a camera. And as soon as any animal passes through it, the sensors get activated and they click the picture, and then we get to know that what animal it was and what it came for.
Right, yeah. So that is like a great way to get like visual proof of whatever animal is present in the area, because you have camera traps that are triggered by a particular sensor, and as Ryanal explained, they do record these photographs, and you can always collect the memory cards later and see what are the animals that were present in this area. So this is one technique. Uh, does anyone know of any other techniques that can be used to monitor biodiversity? Without actually, to give you a hint, physically being there all the time, or yes, but for geotagging, actually, you need to capture the animal first to fit the tag on it. So geotagging mostly tells you about movement. So I can find out from where to where an animal moves, but it's not going to tell me the presence of a particular more or less species in an area. Any other ideas of how we can monitor biodiversity? Okay, so I can probably like cover this in like the next tutorial session. Yes, seeing footprints and marks, surely, yeah, but I still have to go there, right? Yeah, so this kind of monitoring does not involve physically being there. Like, for example, camera traps, I just go there once, I deploy the camera traps, and it continuously collects data for me. Similarly, there is another technique which is slowly gaining momentum in India. It is being used in several other places, but our lab also focuses on biodiversity monitoring using this technique. So I can just tell you. So it is by using sound technology and by using acoustic recording units. So you have these recorders that are programmed to record calls or sounds of the entire soundscape based on a particular schedule. So all one needs to do is deploy these recorders on a tree or in an appropriate location and leave it, and it can just record calls for months altogether, and you can collect the data and analyze them, and based on whatever species are there, you can identify the species based on their calls and assess the species diversity in an area, right? So without even visually seeing them, you can make out whether they have amphibians, that like for example frogs, different types of birds, different kinds of insects, because all these animals like make noises, right? Deer, etc. So acoustic monitoring is another way of biodiversity monitoring, right? Cool. So these are basically examples of field monitoring that we must be very aware of if we are a field biologist, to understand the animals that are present in an area. And sometimes like for examples, like big cats, they can be like really shy, you might not see them, but viewing scat or pug marks in the area should alert you to their presence or not, especially if they are passing by and are infrequent in an area, right? Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, so have a look at this figure, rather this slide, and let's have a discussion on this. So there is an animal shown here. I'm sure all of you might be familiar with this animal. What is this animal?
Lion.
Correct. What lion is it?
Asiatic lion, ma'am.
Asiatic lion, right. Alright, so this is an Asiatic lion, and there are 3 questions attached to this figure. The first is, what is the genetic diversity of the shown species? discuss the reasons that might be driving the genetic diversity of the species, and you have to also give examples in India of species with genetic diversity from the opposite spectrum, right? And I want you to also justify your answers. So let's go with the first one. Feel free to use the chat box. We have about 70 people, 71 people right now. I would like to have some more participation, please. So what would you guess is a genetic okay, so what is genetic diversity? Let's start with that.
The range of different characters which have been inherited by the animal.
Yes, correct. All right. Yeah. So I can definitely go with that, as Kavya has explained. Different traits, different characteristics that are transmitted from one generation to another. Diversity in genes. Yes, genes are basically nothing but functional units that code for different variation in a particular trait. Right. Correct. So, what do you think is the genetic diversity of the species that is shown here?
Madam, can I
Yes?
say?
Yeah, please go on.
Yes, madam. Genetic diversity. Genetic diversity is in a particular area.
Right.
The species live in a particular area, showing the differences in their phenotypic characters, which is
Okay.
ultimately the result of different genetic makeup is called the genetic diversity.
Sure. Okay. Yes. Could you comment on the genetic diversity of this species, which is the Asiatic lion?
Ma'am, I would say that different lions have different calling roles. So the wavelength is different and everything is different. So everyone is diverse. Each lion is diverse from the another lion because of this call. So,
I'm talking, okay, so let's go to like the core level of this. What do you think about the populations of this lion? How many populations? Okay, let's look at the distribution. So I've shown you the map of India, and then it is zoomed into a really small area. So where are these Asiatic lion found? Yeah, getting some answers also from the same 4 people who are participating. Thank you so much for participating, the 4 of you. Okay, so as you can see, the Asiatic lion is found in a very, very small pocket in Gir National Park, that is in Gujarat, correct? And if you can see, it occupies like a very small portion even in the state of Gujarat, which means that the area itself is so small. So you can imagine the population size, right? So there's technically only one big population of lions in India, which is also means lions in the entire world. So what would you comment on the genetic diversity of the species? So yes, they might have different calling types, but technically they are the same species, right? So what is the definition of a species?
Which has a genetically similar characteristic features.
Correct, and that can reproduce, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So all these lions are of the same species, and they have a very similar genetic composition. But when we're talking about genetic diversity, what do you think would be the genetic diversity of this species? It occupies such a small area in the country, and this is its entire area on earth. It's just this area, which is Gir forest. What do you think could be the genetic diversity of this species?
That might also be very small.
Correct, right. So it will be very low, right? The genetic diversity of the species would be very low. And that moves on to the second question, which is why do you think the genetic diversity of the species is low? So, one example is yes, it has a very small area, which means. So, this is going on to actually connect the dots between several lectures that you have already gone through. Small genetic diversity due to less area, effect of environment, yes, but let's talk about habitat. The habitat of this lion is really small. Yes,
But-
carry on, please.
Madam, due to species extinction,
So the species hasn't become extinct yet. It's still very much alive and it is surviving, but it has like a very small area, right? It occupies a really small area. So, which means that it is specific to a particular type of habitat. And yes, the rate of reproduction ideally should be lower because the area occupied is very small and the carrying capacity of like the amount of individuals of a population that is supported by a small area is up till a limit, right? After that, the habitat or the area cannot support more number of individuals. And also, the biggest thing is that the genetic diversity is low because how many populations are there? There is just literally one population, right? Or one, at least like in this particular area, since it's only found in the Gir forest, it's just one population, right? So, could you comment on any species that has a larger genetic diversity? So, we've come to a consensus that this does.
Human beings.
Yes, Kavya?
Human beings. Ma'am.
Human beings. Okay, excellent examples. Yes, human beings do have a very high genetic diversity because we have humans everywhere. Yeah, that's a great example. Any other examples?
Tigers.
Sure, tigers. Can you give me examples of species with higher genetic diversity than tigers?
Insects, none.
Insects, yes, definitely insects. Cheetal, yes, I think I was looking for like some large mammal, and cheetal is like a great example. So, Devesh, can you tell me why cheetal has a very high genetic diversity? Or anyone, could you tell me why cheetal has a. Okay, so a lot of you are saying different species, but I'm talking about the same species here. All right, Rishikesh, yes.
Because of chital is um, prey prey species. That's why their reproduction rate is very high.
Yes, as opposed to predator species, yes, their reproduction rate is also high. But what is like a main factor when you look at the distribution of the lion?
madam,
Yeah.
Madam, this reason behind the great genetic diversity is due to continental drift. As there are players as they live in a particular area, but due to continental drift, there's separate and they adapt themselves according to as they are drifted these drifted parts. So as a result, their diversity is great.
Yeah, I think you might be jumping a few concepts ahead. So, due to continental drift leads to speciation, right? Speciation means formation of different species. But here we are talking about genetic diversity of a particular species.
Madam, in a particular area.
Yes, in a particular area, like for example, like if I've taken lions in Gir versus cheetal. So why would cheetal have a greater genetic diversity? So Devesh has replied due to different habitats, sure. And I'm looking for a keyword.
Isolated population.
Gir Lions are an isolated population, but what about cheetal? Random mating, no, sure. The competition is less. Well, yeah, they're more in number. Sure, but what's like the main thing? Okay, let me give you another hint. It is found in a really small area in one particular state of the country. Could someone tell me something about cheetal?
Ma'am, cheetals are found all over India.
Correct, right? Cheetal is found everywhere in India. Every single state, literally, you can see cheetal, right? So there are so many different populations of cheetal all over the country, and having different populations just means that their genetic diversity is higher, right? Because they're distributed, their distribution is larger, right? So cheetal in, for example, Karnataka might have uh, not absolutely different genetic makeup, but might have different makeup to cheetal in some other area that is far away, right? They're still the same species. Is a generalized species? Yes. Yes. So the fact that the lions are found in a very small area and they are forced to, breed in that particular area, it really reduces the genetic variability because there is a lot of inbreeding since there is no inflow and outflow of lions from different populations, right? As opposed to like cheetal or even like our rhesus macaques, these monkeys that are found all over the country, right? So that is another species which has a very high genetic diversity as compared to the Asiatic lion, which is restricted in a very small area, right? Okay, so I'm just going to go to the next question. Okay, again on biodiversity, let's answer this. On the right is a representation of species from two different communities. So you have community A and community B. So could you tell me what is the difference between the species richness in both community A and B?
Community B has more richness than A.
Okay, and could you tell me why?
Because in A there are just the circles are depicting single species,
Right.
means individual of single species.
Right.
And here there are other circles also. That's why they are showing different species.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thanks Rishikesh for your answer. Does anyone have any different answers from this? Does anyone say species community A is richer than community B? Yes, no? No? Okay, sure. So no, okay. All right. Okay. So I think we have understood why community B is richer than community A. Could you tell me what could be the reasons for differences in community A and B? What do you think are the factors? Like, there is no right or wrong in this. There could be several different factors. Could you give me why the distribution of species in B is different from A?
Ma'am, food availability is more in B as compared to A, and the diversity in food is also more in B So that is why a more number of species are able to survive there.
Okay, so we might never know if the amount of food is more in B or opposed to A, but yes, the diversity of food in B could be a reason as to why uh, there are
Struggle
more
for existence.
struggle for
Madam,
existence. But what struggle for existence? What do you think?
To reproduce, to produce the next
How
project.
does how does that make difference in community A and B? They are the same species. How is the struggle for existence in?
Between two species, competitions may be present.
But it's the same species, right? You have the same species in A and the same species in B. Just that the numbers are different, right? So I mean, if circle was eating star in A, circle will still eat star in B.
Ma'am, it is possible that the conditions for survival of this circle, it is more suitable in A, and the conditions for survival of others, star and this paramecium kind of thing, it is since it is more diverse, it is having more diversity than A, so more number of species can uh, uh, survive in B.
Sure. So what is this factor? You're on the right track. What is this factor?
Environmental factors.
Environmental factors, yes, correct, yes. Environmental factors in terms of habitat, in terms of temperature, in terms of rainfall,
yes,
right?
madam, the environmental parameters necessary to prevail in a particular biodiversity. Say, for example, in community B, it's favorable for the species of the community. That's why the species richness, diversity and species richness in community B is more as compared to B, as compared to A.
Right, yeah. So definitely there could be differences in environmental factors in A and B, and definitely B has environmental factors that support more number of individuals. Disturbance, I'm not sure how we could attribute disturbance. Well, it could be one of the reasons that might have wiped out several of the species earlier and just one species like A survived. Yes, that could be, but the most apparent effect is probably the environmental factors. Alright, I'm just going to go to the next one. I think we're running a little bit low on time. Right. So, can someone comment on what is shown in the figure here?
Ma'am, these are biodiversity hotspots. There are many biodiversity hotspots in around the world. Like for example, in India, there are four biodiversity hotspots. There is this Western Ghats, the Himalayas, Sunda land, and the Indo-Burma.
Right.
Four biodiversity hotspots. They have high biodiversity. They are high biodiversity region because of their uh, location or because of their uh, uh,
Sure,
the
go on.
environment that they have.
Yeah, sure. They have high, their biodiversity hotspots means that they have a very high level of biodiversity of plants and animals. Could someone else add something to what Ranul has mentioned? Can someone comment on the location of these biodiversity hotspots?
Uh, Ma'am, basically these are
Hang
located in
on,
the.
Ryanal, hang on. I know,
Okay.
I know you know the answers. Would someone else like to mention? Not really edge effect. Edge effect is a different concept. Nobody else would like to comment on the locations of these biodiversity hotspots? None of the 62 people. Okay, equatorial. Yes, correct. Thanks, Saraswati. So most of them are centered near the equator, right? Which means that they are what? They are very what in nature? What type of habitat? Warm,
Tropical
yes.
rainforest,
Sorry?
tropical habitat.
Tropical, yes. Tropical habitat does suit a very high biodiversity type. And what do you find in this biodiversity spots? Like high levels of what kind of organisms? Endemism, yes. Can someone tell me what is endemism apart from Ryanul? Thanks for the answer though. Can someone talk a little bit about endemism?
Ma'am, endemism is basically those species
Mm-hmm.
which only found only that place
Correct.
around the
Yes.
world.
Yes. That is absolutely correct. And I think one, yes, Devesh, yes, found in only a particular area. Um, so yeah, they are so biodiversity hotspots have a very high level of endemic organisms, which means they are only found in this particular area and not anywhere else, right? That's why the diversity becomes like so high. Like if you take for example Madagascar supports such a high biodiversity of several flora and fauna that are only found in Madagascar. They're not found anywhere else in the world, right? And why do you think biodiversity hotspots are important?
because every species plays a key role.
Sure. Yes, correct. But why is it so important to make these biodiversity hotspots or to declare these regions as biodiversity hotspots?
And
Madam, as this species from the day of its origin living that particular place, as it is coined in the term of endemic species, the biotic and abiotic component become favorable for them to sustain their life in that particular area. So if this the species of this particular area is migrated to other area, it's very difficult for them to survive to other places. So that's why the conservation of biodiversity hotspot, especially in order to survive this particular species of this particular hotspot, these are madam importance of the biodiversity hotspot.
Right, I think you gave a very long explanation, but your end was perfectly correct. So, definitely, we need to have biodiversity hotspots for conservation to implement conservation because since they have a very high level of endemic species, there are certain priorities that are set in place to focus on these particular regions to monitor the area
Madam,
intensively.
I have question. Can I ask you?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Madam, in the biodiversity hotspot area, can it possible to conserve species in situ condition rather than ex situ?
Yes, of course, you can have in situ conservation in biodiversity hotspots. Like I think, like a lot of plants and animals are protected, right? So that's why you have reserve forests and national parks, and these are all in situ conservation of organisms in these biodiversity hotspots, right? So, for examples, in the Western Ghats, you have so many national parks, and all these national parks entail that all the flora and fauna present in this area is protected by the law, right?
Yes, yes.
So, all these are in situ conservation of all these endemic species and organisms in these biodiversity hotspots. So, it's not free for all. Like, you cannot walk in to restricted areas without permission. You need prior permission to also conduct research in these areas. So all these areas are very protected. right? Okay, I think it's already 8 o'clock. We shall end. I'll wait for another 2 minutes to take any questions. Anybody has any doubts or questions?
Madam, I have another question.
Yeah, sure.
Madam, as I studied in my earlier classes that madam, cryopreservation.
Okay.
That is cryopreservation, madam. That is a egg or sperm preservation of a particular species.
Right,
Madam,
sure.
as this species live in the species of that particular of a particular hotspot area, as they are living in a particular environment.
Mm-hmm.
If we collect their, if we do a fertilization
Mm-hmm.
with the female egg of another area with the sperm of the hotspot species.
Right.
So, madam, as the new species evolve, is this species able to survive in a environment outside the hotspot area?
Yeah, we would never know, right? Because the other animal is from another area, right? That is what you said?
Yes, madam.
Yeah, so we will never
Madam,
know, right?
outside the hotspot area.
If it's the same species, yes, it might survive, but usually hotspots, you have very different species between hotspots, right? So it might be unlikely, and even if they are able to successfully breed, it might be a hybrid organism, it might not be the same species,
Yes.
right? So I am not aware of any such studies, but yeah, I don't know. Is it possible to increase hotspot area? Well, I think they came up with these hotspot areas based on certain calculations and certain distributions of species. I'm not sure if hotspots, like who actually makes these hotspots, they are declared by a panel of scientists, but you can definitely increase protected areas. So, like the national parks or protected areas, are also known as PAs in the countries, can be expanded, but mostly, yeah, it depends. Any other questions? All right. All right,
Madam,
then.
I
Yeah.
have one question outside the topic, madam.
Yeah, sure.
Outside the topic, madam. Madam, actually, my MSc second semester exam is going on, madam. That's why I'm unable to attend the previous classes. So, madam, how can I access the previous classes notes, madam?
So all the previous classes are online videos. So you can always look back on these lectures. It should be on your NPTEL website, the SWAYAM NPTEL website. You will have all the classes in a particular module that you can access at any point of time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Madam.
and all the YouTube videos are also on a link. So let me tell you all, it is on the discussion forum. Let me send you a link of it.
तीतसदा मैडम ने बताया था, मैं तुमको भेज दूंगा, टेंशन लेने की कोई बात नहीं.
Yeah, let me just find that. If I can't find it, yes, thank you, please just share it. Oh, I can't find it, sorry. Yeah, so all the videos are available of the tutorial are available on YouTube, and if you go to if you just Google NPTEL Wildlife Ecology Chiti Arvind, or if you do NPTEL Wildlife Biology Jobin Varghese, you will get our YouTube channel, and yeah, all the videos are there.
मैम फाइनल में जो क्वेश्चन होगा वो सारा की सारा एमसीक्यू होगा ना, डिस्क्रिप्टिव लिखना पड़ेगा?
I am not really sure about this. I think this was discussed somewhere, but I'm thinking that it might be both types, descriptive as well as objective. But yeah.
मैम अगले क्लास में कृपया शेयर होके बताएंगे क्या?
हाँ, sure, I can find out and
ठीक है
update you
मैम.
all. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I can't find the link, but I think somebody said that they would share it with you, so please. Problem discussion. Yes, it's all on YouTube. I can send you a link of my YouTube channel or just the YouTube channel itself. So whoever is here. So I'll upload this video maybe tomorrow or day after. So this is the link for my channel. I'm putting it on the chat. Let me find the other channel as well for Jobin. Yeah, putting this on the chat here. This is for Jobin. Alright then, thank you. See you next Tuesday evening.